Kevin is the Executive Director of Experience at Avenue CX, which is a boutique content strategy and customer experience agency based in the Boston area. So Kevin's staying up late tonight to speak to us. We appreciate that. He started his career in user experience, so that kind of led to his focus on creating strong customer content experiences. And at Avenue CX, he's sort of taken that passion about content, working with global brands to improve their overall content and customer experiences. Aside from consulting, he's the author of Enterprise Content Strategy, a project guide. Definitely one of my favorite books in our field. It's one I refer to often. Highly recommend it. And co-author of the book UX for Dummies. He's also the chair of the Content Strategy Alliance Best Practices Initiative. And appropriate for tonight, Kevin is someone who really follows and does a lot of research into kind of trends in content and customer experience and so on. And that research and that work that he does to kind of stay very much in tune with what's happening really informs his practice and his thought leadership. So please join me in welcoming Kevin Nichols.
Hello, everybody. And I'm very excited to be here. I'm going to try to share my deck. I am hailing from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Right now, it is now 9:12 p.m. on the East Coast. I do want to do a shout out to anybody in the Southern California area. We have a colleague who's been impacted by the fires going on out there. So my heart goes out to anybody out there. Hope that you're all safe and well, and yeah, stay strong. One second while I try to share my share. All right, let me go back. Sorry. Oh, why is it doing this? Go back. Okay.
There you go.
One second. Let's put this into share mode. Sorry.
There we go. Perfect.
So we are here today to talk about trends in content for 2025. When I do these trend reports, I try to consult various indexes, analyst reports, et cetera. They're still coming out for 2025. For example, Forrester is doing a report, I believe, tomorrow, and then a few others, and they're definitely worth listening to. George Coloni, the CEO of Forrester last year, said that generative AI was the largest and most significant technology breakthrough of his lifetime. I found that interesting because I'm thinking that he probably was at least born at the time of the moon landing, if not shortly thereafter. The invention of the pill, the internet, all of these things are huge technology advances that have changed civilization and cultures as we know them. But it was interesting for him to say that, and I would advise and recommend that those analyst reports that are coming out, a lot of them are really good and have a lot of great content. I'm going to give you a really brief overview of Avenue CX and me. Paula already did that for the most part, so I'm going to skip over my introduction slide. We're going to then go to content trends for 2025, and then I'll take questions and thank you. I'm going to be consulting my notes. It's 9:15 p.m. I'm what they call a Gen Xer. So at this point in time, I'm usually in bed. So forgive me when I'm consulting my notes, but I'm going to have to do that. So yeah, let's get to it. So Paul already gave you, great reading of my biography, and I appreciate that, Paula. Avenue CX, we're a small boutique content strategy consultancy in Boston area, and we really look to help large brands stand up content solutions in a variety of different ways. So it could be anything from structured content. We do a lot of work with controlled vocabularies, taxonomies, CCMS, and CMS as well. anywhere from selection to requirements, workflow, all that kind of great stuff. We also do customer journey content modeling and mapping. We do personalization content strategy, omnichannel content strategy, and enterprise content strategy, looking at things across the enterprise. We've recently added a new service offering with technical support content and help content and technical documentation. We try to stand up content throughout the enterprise for success, and we do it from an objective standpoint. We take business objectives and then create content strategy objectives from them. We go down to the content type level. We have KPIs that we then create metrics to measure, or recommended metrics, and then we come up with an approach to really help you tie that into performance so that you're evaluating your content on an ongoing basis. Just a really quick note, we just released a B2B self-service white paper. It's self-service and technical documentation, and we surveyed with Scott Abel, hundreds of different technical documentation teams to see how they treat and handle self-service content, and we have recommendations in there. If you want this white paper, just go to avenuecx.com, our homepage, scroll down, you'll see the white paper in a rel, click on that, and then you just sign up for a form. You can opt to not receive communications, but if you do, we don't give you a lot of communications. We just basically, we're going to be releasing a customer journey white paper soon, and so we'll send that out to everybody on our mailing list, and we'll do like maybe every couple of months announcements and newsletter. Okay, let's get started. 2025 content trends, where are we? I think we're definitely in a world of what is uncertain, turbulent, and there's much change constantly around us. A couple years ago, permacrisis was added to, I forget which HarperCollins, I believe, dictionary. And analysts and firms were all talking about how we're in the state of permacrisis and how consumers are responding to that. Well, it turns out they've kind of got used to this permacrisis, and now we're in more of a state of what is being called agency, and we'll get a little bit more into that in a minute. But there's a lot going on. So if you ever thought your job was going to be boring, I think this year will prove pivotal that it is not boring, especially in the content world. Okay, let's look at the first trend, which is artificial intelligence. No big surprise there. One thing I do want to call out, you probably heard this term agentic artificial intelligence. Agentic AI is AI that is autonomous, and it doesn't require humans to interact or engage with it in order for it to perform. So it's able to do whatever it needs to do completely autonomously. I don't think we're at a state where we're going to be seeing sort of agentic logic in artificial intelligence with content quite yet. We're not there yet. It's still, content requires a lot of moderation. Fully automated AI models that require no human interaction are just not there. They are training LLMs to obviously try to do things like chatbots and other types of solutions, but it still requires at least maybe not on a one-to-one interaction with the individual or the customer, but at least tweaking on behalf of the team and really figuring out what works and what doesn't work. So we're very much in this sort of proof of concept phase with a lot of AI technology in businesses today. AI has failed to demonstrate fully its ROI. You're going to see this comes out of a lot of different reports. It's getting there to a certain degree with certain things, but what a lot of businesses did, and I'm going to say 2 years ago, was they started downsizing their workforces, and this went into all the way to this year as well. And part of that was they had overhired after shelter in place. Part of it was, the economy, but a large part of it also was they were trying to shore up cash and reserves in order to make investments in AI because they weren't quite sure where that was necessarily going to go. Unfortunately, some of those companies laid off workers that are absolutely critical of AI, working with AI. And I would argue that content teams in particular are absolutely critical to work with AI and to make it much more robust in the solutions that it delivers. So there is consumer distrust on it as well, and that continues to rise. Customers don't know what exactly it is, whether or not they should trust it. There's just a lot of research out there that they also don't know what's happening with their data. And there's a lot of stories out there, anywhere from facial recognition that is being used by certain, or at least tested by certain folks, but also brands are considering facial recognition in terms of personalizing in-store uh, uh, offers and this sort of thing. Um, but the consumer distrust of it is rising, and it probably may not even have peaked quite yet. Um, so it is definitely not a silver bullet by any stretch. And we're going to see a lot of testing, and companies that have made mistakes early on try to take more conservative approaches in how they handle AI, and particularly how they do hybrid models with their employees to make sure that their employees aren't necessarily relegated to to not being involved, but rather what's the strengths that the human can bring versus what AI can do, and how can jobs be made more efficient, and at the same point in time the best content and the best solutions come out of the artificial intelligence and the generative AI. So generative AI will continue, but it's going to have a lot more moderation and human involvement in it. And this is coming out from a lot of what the analysts are looking at. There's a proliferation of AI in terms of, because of the proliferation of AI, um, there was a lot of content that was put out there in last year that was either AI generated or heavily influenced with AI. And we saw kind of a glut of that in certain industries. I think you're going to see a rise in authentic content coming back. And video is a great way to do this. And you're going to see businesses doing it with video because it's a way to showcase people or folks within their businesses and or customers and or stories that they want to tell, and do it authentically, where they can actually say, okay, this is really us, and they can actually put into it something that's more than just this sort of AI generated stuff. Um, Multimodal AI models with hybrid human engagement and moderation. Now, what I'm talking about here is multimodal AI models look at several sets of data for content creation. Um, and they look at several different, like, for example, repositories, to then create more comprehensive solutions or content for the output. This really does require clean, structured content for optimal performance. And that's another theme that I think you're going to be seeing, is that the smart businesses get that structured content and clean content is only going to enable AI to be more successful. And it can become competitively differentiating for businesses as well, because if you don't have clean content, like a lot of these AI solutions sit on top of content, they scrape it, they index it, they then determine what it is that, they then run algorithms or whatnot. Um, there's an output then, from that. If you're sitting on top of just massive amounts of redundant, outdated, trivial content, or content that is quality versus content that is not, um, you're not going to have the best AI content being generated. And then there's probably going to be errors. It's probably going to, some of it's going to be outdated. There's going to be superfluous stuff in there. So the cleaner your content is, the better. This means that you really should do inventories and audits. You can use AI to help you do this, of course, but that humans need to look at this content, come up with a strategy to sunset anything that is redundant, outdated, or trivial, and really put their best content as well as their most relevant and useful content into systems that are going to be culled by AI technology. The other thing that really helps benefit it, if it's structured. So if your content types are consistent across the different systems, if your content types have modules and rules for which content types are comprised, if they're semantic, meaning that they are that you tag them with metadata, for example, and they can speak from one machine to another, and that metadata is consistent across. All of these things are very, very critical if you're going to have really good AI solutions, for the long term. So structured content solutions is another thing to really think about when you're looking at this. Expect turbulence, but I advocate for all of us to lean into AI and to find how we can best work with it and optimize it with our work, and show our value that way. It is incumbent upon us as content professionals to understand what AI technologies exist in our domain and space, understand how we can leverage those more effectively, and then even if we have to, do business cases to say, look, this is where the human involvement is absolutely critical. This is where humans and machines working together can generate the best content or best customer content experiences. Um, I'm personally, I think that this is going to be key because business leaders don't always understand how it is that we can uh, be involved with this and why we need to be involved with it. And the final thing here is AI for understanding big data and content performance. So you're going to see a push from a lot of businesses to look at internal operations and leveraging AI to look at efficiencies, bottlenecks, et cetera. One of the things that we always say at Avenue CX is that content is an asset, but it's only an asset if you can quantify its value as such. When you're looking to quantify the value of content, you look at how it performs externally. But if you're going to make a business case around it as an asset, you have to understand the cost of that content, which means you have to understand time to produce it. Looking internally to the operations and saying it takes X amount of time to produce content can tell that story because time equals cost. So this whole push for AI to look at operations and try to figure out how can we quantify things, how can we look for efficiencies, how can we look at processes to see which is the best, but also if you're looking at it from a customer standpoint, um, or if you're looking at it through the lens of a customer, you want to look at how do you build a model operationally that's going to support the customer journey no matter who it is or where they are in that stage, and not so much a siloed or internal business unit model where you have each division producing its own content to its own channel. So AI can help in all this, and it can really help create more robust internal operations. I think, again, it's important to lean into it and understand the value that it can add, but where you're absolutely critical in that process as well. So these are really what I see as the key trends for AI, but I think it's really going to be incumbent upon us as content professionals to help tell the story and shape the story of what our involvement is vis-a-vis that. The next area that remains a real, like, out of every single report I saw, nobody failed to mention personalization. And oftentimes it was number one, if not number two, um, in a lot of trends for what companies are looking at. And personalization requires content. So it's very much a part of content and content strategy. I recently gave a State of the Union on personalization for 2025 to the uh, Personalization Wrangler audience. I do a web show called The Personalization Wrangler, and that's under Scott Abel's brand, The Content Wrangler. And I ended up doing a bunch of definitions because I realized people don't understand what we're talking about here. So I understand this audience gets content and everything else, but I just want to make sure that we're all aligned. And there's a lot of obfuscation going on in definitions in the personalization world right now as well, which is only making it more difficult. So first of all, segmentation, personification, persona-based, industry vertical, or geo-based uh, uh, models are all personalization. I just had a client the other day call me up and ask me if I could give them research on the difference between segmentation and personalization, and I'm thinking there is no difference. Segmentation is an aspect of personalization. Um, Now, one might argue that if you are personalizing to a segment or to a persona or to a customer journey stage, that you're not fully personalized and therefore that it's not real personalization. But given that definition, and I had said this on my web show a few weeks ago, when somebody puts in "Hi, Kevin" into a mailer that they mail out in a uh, otherwise generic or boilerplate template, well, by their definition, because they've said "Hi, Kevin," and they're not personalizing to a segment or a persona, that's personalization. And indeed it is. But I think what they're getting at is that more of robust personalization, really knowing the user and catering content that's relevant to them, that's what they're getting at. The thing about that is that all the things that I mentioned are personalization. And oftentimes personalization strategy, and this is why this is important, why I'm belaboring the point, it starts with a strategy where you start with a segment or customer journey state or industry vertical. And then you go deeper. So you can cross-reference information once you know who that user is against those other data points. And uh, if the deepest you ever go is segmentation, for some businesses, that's fine. Say you're a business that has industry verticals and you see based on what somebody clicks on your website that they're interested in a vertical. So you start showing them content specific to that. That might help you capture a lead for that person very quickly if you do it right, which will then give you more information to personalize against. But then you've already captured certain data points even without asking that, visitor. So this is an example of where personalization strategy is very important. Hyperpersonalization is the big buzzword this year. Hyperpersonalization is a technique of advanced personalization that delivers real-time information based on a variety of different data sources. So it's really one-to-one personalization. Another synonym of it is individualization or one-to-one marketing. What this is when you go to like on Amazon or Netflix or any of these types of, of really highly personalized experiences, and they're able to make real specific recommendations on what you might like or anticipate where you might go next and serve you up content. That is hyper personalization. Most brands are not there. Most organizations are not there because it requires a lot of data. It requires machine learning, artificial intelligence, real-time analysis of data, and then being able to act on that data to create a unique customer experience. But you're going to hear hyper-personalization because those that can do it, customers are craving it, and we know that it, when done well, it just has all sorts of added benefit to all types of different conversion metrics. By the way, the term hyper-personalization was first used in a book, Trend Korea 2020 by Nando Kim, for those interested. Predictive personalization is also going to be really big this year. And that's when machine learning or AI predicts or anticipates a customer needs and preferences and is able to then serve them up content based on that. It could be an aspect of hyper personalization, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Predictive search or anything like that can be kind of an example of that, but only if they know who the user is. And product recommendations on an e-commerce site would be an example, or personalized email campaigns. Customer data platforms, you're going to be hearing more about these. And again, this is a content thing. These are platforms that sit across multiple systems and then are able to generate real-time content based on all these different data points about a user. So a user might get an email before they open it. If they go to the website and do something, the contents of that email could change based on the fact that of what they're doing. That's technology CDPs use. It also can do hyper personalization quite effectively. And these are going to be stuff that you're going to see if your business has not made an investment in. Business is making more of an investment in this year because of hyper personalization being so critical and on people's radars. And you may hear about this on your own teams of, being, it requires, it can take existing content and just serve that up, but to do it really effectively, you have to have structured content solutions, and they have to account for different persona, different use cases for where you want to personalize and which content to write and create, to meet those needs. Otherwise, you're just serving up existing content, wrapping personalization rules around that, and that can get very limiting quickly. Real-time dynamic personalization at scale. That's another thing you're going to be hearing a lot about this year. And that's being able, at scale means that you're able to personalize in real time and scale it to the user no matter what. Now, personalization is really big, but consumers have said already they want it, but only when you get it right, and only when their privacy and um, their their privacy is protected. Um, they're willing to actually pay more when companies do this stuff effectively um, than for a product or a service. But again, it has to be done in an effective way that respects privacy. Empathy is really key here to providing truly relevant experiences. And I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but empathy really is building more qualitative research and analysis into your content so you can write content that is empathetic to certain use cases. You're not going to use empathy for all of your content, but you should identify which content is necessary and best suited for empathy, and then try to make investments in that particular content. It is more expensive, but it also has a payoff as well. Omnichannel. So just to give a quick definition of omnichannel for those that don't know, I define omnichannel as when the customer has seamless interaction with a brand, whether he, she, or they are engaging with one touch point or another throughout their entire experience with that brand. Concepts such as single view of the customer, regardless of where they are or which customer touch point, weigh into this. Um, and having sort of a single view of the customer really is part of an omni-channel uh, part of what omni-channel truly is. Um, Omni-channel experience is the expectation of all customers in all industries. This means that when they go from one channel to the next, they're expecting at least congruity, if not more seamless interaction. So if you haven't optimized your channels at the very least for the types of content experiences that your users are going to need, you definitely want to think about that. Cross-channel customer journeys, and these aren't journey maps, these are specific use cases that you build journeys for across the channels. For example, self-service, in technical documentation, you might want to build specific use cases around that. As you're doing that, create a customer journey that shows all the customer touch points or channels that they're engaged with, and then identify the key content that's going to be necessary to support those in each of those channels. Understand that print, email, in-store, all of this is still very, very, very highly relevant. In our survey that we did, we found in B2B world, print is still the number one used source for self-service content. And in this case, it was print user guides, which are PDFs, but as well as print. Um, Look at really fostering, if you haven't already and you're in content team, reach out to customer experience and reach out to analytics teams. This is going to be another theme that I talk about in this presentation. I just had a wonderful conversation. I do a podcast, and we're going to release this podcast in February, but it was with Tom Broderick, and it was on media planning and buying, and its role in sort of content, but also just its importance, as a part of the whole customer experience and marketing landscape. Media planners and buyers work in data, and they probably know more about customers than most people in our world. And so incorporating folks like that into teams when it comes to content design, or when it comes to customer journey content modeling, or even when it comes to doing strategies, when it's like personalization strategy or omnichannel strategy or even content strategy, they can give you all sorts of data points about what they're seeing in customer behavior and how you can incorporate that. So this cross-channel multidisciplinary team approach, I think, is very important in building customer journeys, but also content for omnichannel experiences or any experience. And it's also a way to demonstrate your value. I always advise technical documentation teams to align to customer experience teams and to get on the roadmap, because technical documentation is a great way to quantify certain aspects of customer experience. The two can work together. CX can elevate oftentimes the brand positioning internally of technical documentation teams by making them a part of their um, agendas with, at every level. Other trends that we're going to see in omnichannel, you're going to see shopping assistants, AI-powered fashion assistants, smarter grocery shopping. Account-based marketing in the B2B world is making a big comeback. Salesforce trends for 2025 points this out. Face recognition, we're going to see more and more of that. And that is going into a store, your face gets scanned by a device, and then it can then, obviously, it will authenticate you and like know who you are. And then there's all this research in terms of how that can be used in the in-store shopping and hospitality experiences. Brick and mortar continue to make a comeback, and this is because in this age of permacrisis, people are still talking about being alone and feeling alone. People want interaction. There was a record amount of returns during shelter in place. This costs the businesses a lot of money. It costs frustration on the part of the consumers. That is also driving people to go to brick and mortar. But really, it's also this need to connect with people and folks. Also, brick and mortar in terms of anything artisanal and or local, very, very big, and should be considered in terms of like content as well. Print is not dead, and I've often said, I take a line from a couple of other folks here, but I think, print has a permanence, and there's all sorts of research about how you retain more information if you read it on print than not, etc. But print is definitely something that is still leveraged by a lot of businesses and should be as part of any omnichannel strategy. So look at where you can add value there. And then video, social, brick and mortar. Again, like I said, those are all big event-based in-person events are also making a huge comeback. So developing content for those influencers in those particular events are important, and we've seen this importance demonstrated. So think about ways with which to leverage content stories or whatnot in those types of events when you're thinking about any type of content planning. I just want to show you consumers purchase from a variety of channels, highlighting the value of a true omnichannel approach. This is from Marigold's 2025 Relationship Marketing Survey. The share of consumers who purchased from the following marketing channels in the last 12 months: 54% email, 44% social media ad, 43 social media post, 26% SMS, and then 22% alert via mobile app. I put this out there because, we oftentimes, a lot of us get caught up just on the website or think about these sorts of things, but these other channels are very important, particularly if you're in the consumer, the B2C market. So you definitely want to think through, as you're thinking about content, the integrated customer experience and where they are within their journey with you and what they're doing. Okay, changing consumer behaviors. So consumer behaviors continue to change. And I always look at Havas Meaningful Brands Index. They're the ones that came up with, X amount of people could care less if brands were to go away tomorrow. I think the statistic is now 74%. It goes up and down, but right now, 74% would not miss it, brands if they were to go away or disappear. But what they also do is they really look at indexing what makes a meaningful brand and what do people actually care about. These levers you're going to see in many other indexes, because what they're able to tease out in all of their research and all of their their polling and their analysis are what is driving customers and consumers and what's important to them. And these are very good to know from a content perspective as well. Like I say, if you look at other reports that index customer experience and or consumer trends or any of this stuff, the things that they end up teasing out are generally held by the others as well, or found by the others. So I'm just going to give you their top 6 takeaways about consumers. One, consumers want brands to show more humanity and generosity when times are tough. That's 73%. 71% wants brands to do more good for society and the future of the planet. 70% wants them to do more for their local communities or causes. 68% says help save money. 63% make my day-to-day life easier, and 61% help me save time. So help me save money, make my day-to-day life easier, and help me save time. These are all considerable factors when you're thinking about types of content or content experiences to create for the user. And they should be levers that you're thinking through in terms of what is trending. Now, these trends, by the way, I think we've been seeing these for the last few years, but they're still very important. A Marigold report says that 49% of a brand's reputation is a factor that is more important than price when making a purchasing decision, and 68% will pay more with brands they trust. 57% of consumers say that their favorite brand uses their data in a way that makes them feel comfortable. So this gets into sort of the privacy thing again, but making clear how you use that data and having really clear transparency policies written to the user is another thing that I strongly advocate about, and it is a content issue. So that's something else to think through whenever you're asking users for information, that you're very clear about what you're doing with that, and you're very transparent about your privacy policies. Um, Loyalty programs are really big right now, from the business side of things, and they're offering all sorts of incentives to maintain loyalty. Sephora does a really good job of this right now. Customer retention is definitely going to be a big priority in 2025. So you want to look at, and you're going to also hear businesses placing an emphasis not just on customer acquisition, but retention of customers. Um, Shopify in their trends report calls out personalized rewards for loyalty members as a key thing or win in creating not only that as a program, but content around it. And again, empathy maps, because empathy can build trust. Um, Margaret Bloomstein wrote a great book called Trustworthy. I highly recommend everyone read it. It's a couple years old, but it's still highly, highly relevant. And it's one of the best books in the industry that I've read in the last couple of years. And she talks a lot about how to build trustworthy brands in it. Um, Again, with empathy maps, you want to prioritize which content you're going to use to build empathy into. And you look at building empathy as an emphasis into the customer journey and making decisions around that. Havas calls this era an era of agency, and they talk about how consumers are now taking the agency to affect the change that they think they need to see, but they're expecting brands to go along with them. And within this sort of expectation, they're expecting brands to not just say that they're going to do it. The proof is in the pudding. They're really looking for action with anything that a brand says. Self-service support will continue to be something that is big, and help content is very important there, but getting it right and getting it effective is key. And then finally, protection of data and data transparency. That's going to be key things for changing customer behaviors and how you meet that challenge. I do want to give you two other interesting things I saw. So CMS Wire Justin Racine wrote in 5 digital shopping and customer experience trends for big brand wins in 2025. He talks about an advisory mentality shift and that brands should adopt an advisor role to build loyalty and offer personalized recommendations based on a consumer preferences and trends. So this is highly tailored sort of advisory type content to help guide a shopper or customer through what it is that they need. And then AI driven commerce growth, he also referenced. So conversational commerce powered by AI is really starting to reshape how consumers interact with brands. It is true. Conversational assistants and search, for example, are are really big. And again, these done well, and especially if they're going to integrate with other search or other functions within your business, structured content is key in order to stand these up successfully. Um, let's go to the next. Content operations will continue to remain a central focus for brands, and part of this is the whole thing on profitability as well as containing costs is very, very much on the radars of a lot of executives. I'm going to think that governance could be making a big comeback this year because I think that businesses that have tried to roll out AI or understood that it's only as good as the content that they have and the data they have are going to gravitate towards mechanisms in order to get that back to where it needs to be. Now, first of all, they need to clean it up and they need to go through, like I said, go through a content audit, for example, same thing with their data, and then clean it up and have rules around it and standards to which it will, adhere moving forward, and then build mechanisms in to make sure that you're doing that on an ongoing basis. Well, governance is going to be key to that. I think a focus is also going to continue to be on the importance of everything around the entire customer experience. So you're going to see internal operations looking more and more at how they can morph to supporting that customer content experience. Um, and I think elevating technical content is going to be another thing that we see, and content that builds loyalty with existing customers. I think this is going to be a real year where structured content, technical content, and these things come out of the woodwork and demonstrate their value. Um, AI is going to look at where gains and efficiencies can be made in operations. Please think about strongly leaning into this. And as you lean into it, learn about what those technologies are doing and why, and then figure out how you can augment that, so that the solutions or the outputs of that are even better through, bringing yourself to the table and integrating yourself into those types of efforts or work. I think you'll see that there is a big payoff there overall. Let's go to content types and formats. Visual content just continues to rise. Video will be very important from shorts to how to, um, including live stream. That's going to be big and recorded video. Um, Again, part of this is brands are trying to, well, they recognize that there's a real return on investment on video. They recognize that the conversion rates are higher if done well. Video shorts have gotten very big thanks to all the video social platforms out there. But they're also looking at things like self-service and doing how-to content with video. I think that you're going to continue to see video being very big here. Also, it's become a lot less expensive to produce higher quality video, partially because of AI technology, but also some of the technological um, uh, advances in video production. Um, Video is able to be generated, by AI in certain cases, and that's going to continue as well. But I think authentic video with real people can really showcase all sorts of things for a brand and put a face to that brand. And I think we're going to see this. At least with smart businesses. Podcasts are very, very big right now. They're now outperforming radio in terms of audience and listenership. And they're also, businesses are understanding how to use them to tell stories that may not necessarily be completely on brand, but at least are interesting and inspiring and can get their brand amplified to people who may not know that yet. Voice search optimization is another thing I just want to speak to. So, optimizing content for voice and search queries, considering natural language and conversational tone. This is only going to see You're going to see more investment in this as we go. Um, Emerging platforms such as augmented reality and AI are going to continue to advance. We're not really there in terms of demand. Certain industries have used them more than others, but I think we're going to continue to see a lot of growth there. Influencers are going to be becoming important, particularly niche influencers for niche topics. Uh, Face recognition, as I noted previously, that's going to be another big thing. Self-service content, loyalty content, anything around community building. Um, right now nurturing loyal customer bases and communities. So if you are a B2B and you have an online community, I think there's going to be a push to make more investments with those communities internally. But any type of community building that your business can do, that's going to be key. And that's also very beneficial, to sort of peer-to-peer evaluation of product and services. Gamification, interactive content, and I'm just giving you things that you're not seeing on the slide, but these are additional things that come up in all the indices. Gamification is very, very big this year. So polls, quizzes, anything around interactive content that users can like sink their teeth into and participate. Shoppable videos. So integrating shopping experience into real-time video, that's going to be something you see in the B2C retail sector. Live streaming and Q&A sessions. And then finally, I said event-based is making sort of a comeback. When I talk about this, I'm talking about like conferences and that sort of thing that are in person. Those are definitely making a comeback this year. Okay, social trends, and I'm only going to speak to this because I think it is a content issue. And right now there is a incredible, like, I did this slide last week and I almost wanted to redo it after Mark Zuckerberg announced that they're not going to do fact checking in Meta anymore. I don't know where we're going to net out on like, if you were to read something probably 3 weeks ago, you would see that Facebook and Instagram are going to reign in terms of social for like business this year. I don't think you're going to see that at this point. TikTok is still uncertain. So there's a lot of turbulence here, but we do know that social content is important. And 60% of businesses want their social content to entertain, educate, or inform without directly promoting themselves. This is coming from Hootsuite, and Hootsuite had this great analysis where it said that moving forward for this year, a lot of businesses are some of them are even going off brand on social, depending on the platform, like TikTok, for example. But they're trying to create more of a more of a less serious, fun, kind of happy, entertaining, or humorous content experience for customers, because they recognize, and this came up in a lot of the indexes on customer and consumer trends, that people are just exhausted of seriousness. They really want to like have some fun, and it's just been overloaded with information that is serious, heavy, and everything else, given everything that's going on in the world and people's lives. Video will continue to be huge on social. Video shorts have made a huge um, entry into all things social in the last year, and you're going to continue to see that to proliferate. Um, I would say that there's also this talk of specific voice and tone for social media sites that don't necessarily conform to brand standards, but I don't know if any of you've seen the AARP, the Association for Retired Persons, of which I am. um, You get a card, by the way, as soon as you turn 50. It's the first thing I got in the mail. Um, but if you go to the TikTok for AARP and you look at it, it's all targeted at Gen X, my generation, and it is hilarious. I never would have thought that AARP would produce content like that because I always thought it was much like the Silver Surfer senior type of advertising and marketing. But specific voice and tone for social media sites could be big win here. And social does have a lot of turbulence going on, like I said. So stay tuned on where all that's heading. Um, so let's finally, I'm going to end cap this with concerns when it comes to data and privacy, because this is huge. There's 2 points I want to make here. One is internally the value of data. I fundamentally believe that data is an currency that we content people need to leverage it much more effectively in our work than we've been doing. Um, I think one of the things that we did in our survey, we found that like, I want to say like 30% of technical documentation teams weren't using metrics that very like except baseline, for their content. This is a huge opportunity. Um, why? Because content and analytics and data go hand in hand. And it can help us on so many different levels. So getting involved and getting aligned with any folks in data or analytics is key. I think in this year it's going to, make or break a lot of content teams. Also align with customer experience because you can tell stories around how content quantifies that, especially with how data is leveraged. Now, by the way, AI is only as good as the data that it's scraping as well as the content or that it's ingesting or leveraging. Um, Data also, just as content requires a content strategy and good objectives and KPIs and an understanding of how to structure it so that it is uh, semantic and that it's structured in a reusable way where you can create it once, where you can publish it wherever you need it, for example, where you don't have redundancy, outdated, trivial, content. Data requires the same strategy. And this is the problem with a lot of these sort of omni-channel and or across channel initiatives in the past is the data that they were looking at was all over the place and it's not clean. Content folks should know which data they need in order to quantify the value of their content, as well as data that they need in order to improve their content. And being able to tell that story is absolutely imperative if you're trying to really build business cases for why it is that you should have investment in your team or whatnot. Data storytelling is also going to be a big thing here with because AI can look at all this different data, but being able to tell a story around that. And this means that the dashboards that you're reporting out to your executives or whatnot on how your content's performing, etc. You really want to get good at being able to tell that story because it's a way to quantify your value and your worth to people at that C level. And this is very important right now. Let's look at data and privacy kind of from an external standpoint. So obviously, privacy is a huge lever in a lot of what we were talking about. EU AI law, which is out, is kind of like the GDPR of artificial intelligence. I just want to read a few things that it does. It says that you have to disclose content that was generated by AI. It says you have to design the model to prevent it from generating illegal content, publish summaries of copyright data used for training, exploitation of vulnerabilities of persons, manipulation and use of subliminal techniques um, must be published. Social scoring for public and private purposes. Individual predictive policing based solely on profiling people, that's prohibited. Untargeted scraping of internet or CCTV for facial images to build up or expand, prohibited. Emotional recognition in the workplace or educational institutions unless for medical or safety reasons, i.e., monitoring the tiredness levels of a pilot, would be a safety reason. But emotional recognition in workspace and educational institutions prohibited. Biometric categorization of natural persons to deduce or infer their race, political opinion, trade union membership, religious or philosophical beliefs or sexual orientation prohibited, and real-time remote biometric identification in public accessible spaces by law enforcement subject to narrow exceptions. So the EU law on AI is really going to do quite a bit of kind of reining in the Wild West that we see, but much more is needed there. It will be yet to be seen if our Congress actually acts on it and does something. Um, I also wanted to note that Google has delayed in 2024 once again its pushback or delayed its sunsetting of cookies, but that is now targeted for early 2025. That is also going to significantly impact how a lot of brands that have not gone away from third-party data to personalize or to do all sorts of marketing automation around, they're going to be really impacted by that. So I think we're going to see cookies going away indefinitely, probably in the near future, but it's going to be a process to get there. And that obviously impacts content as well, and content solutions we're putting forth. So those are my real kind of key trends for 2025. And I did a little bit of exegesis on some of those. I know I threw a lot at you, so I hope that it wasn't too much information. I hope you got out of this what you wanted or thought, you know, needed to get out of it. I'm totally willing to take questions now, and I'm gonna just move my slides out of the way.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, we do have some questions queued up, and Tony is going to kind of read those out to you and
Can I
want to
say
hear
one thing
your
that I
thoughts.
did want to say before?
Oh, of course.
Sorry. I just had seen the farewell address to Biden right before this. It was on all the news stations and all. I was also on all the networks if folks saw that. And he said, you know, America for everybody is the one word that he would use to define America's possibilities. I want to leave it with that. I mean, yes, there's turbulence. Yes, there's a lot going on, but there's also a ton of possibilities. And the future really is ours if we want to make it and if we want to have our imprint on it. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to have our own agency, whatever that means at the level that we are in a business or organization, to really have to take that effort and lean into AI and figure out how we can best not only be served by it, but how it can serve us and how we can also leverage our own unique capabilities as humans to uh, create an even better solution overall for everyone.
Nice. Very
Excellent.
inspiring, Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, tons of stuff, super dense, and lots of great questions. If anyone has additional questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We already have a few. So, first one comes from Hillary. You talked about hyper personalization, and Hillary was curious if you could share any examples or show us any great examples of real time hyper personalization at scale.
So hyper personalization at scale. So Netflix is doing it. What's the sound? What's the audio one that I Spotify is doing it. Any of the big box retailers are doing it. Sephora is doing it. Um, it's, for example, they dynamically change their content every time you go on the site. Every single thing you do. If you're logged in, their recommendations or whatnot and their algorithms. So what they do is these machines are not only um, sending you information based on really complex understandings of user behaviors and being able to give you stuff that's highly relevant to you, they're also constantly learning on top of it. So it's a very fine-tuned approach to personalization. So if you go to some place and they say you might like this, and it's something that you didn't even think that you would be interested in or didn't even think of, that's predictive and hyper personalization at work right there, and they're doing it very well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next question came from Dan, and Dan had to jump off, but he had a great question, and it's one I had as well. You talked a bit about help content and help pages. Dan was curious, help and support content, do you situate that on relevant product and support service pages or in a dedicated help and support section? I think we've all seen or potentially worked for organizations that have a Zendesk experience, their own experience. Curious if you could tell us what you've seen about how that's been evolving.
Well, first of all, when we did our survey, this was very interesting, but the organizations I've been working with, and I've worked with some recent organizations on technical documentation. Um, I worked with another organization on enterprise content strategy, and one of their key drivers was case deflection for across the board. Um, there are multiple channels and touch points that help content is going to surface in. And if you read our survey, you'll see that just in the B2B world, they listed, I want to say 15, I could be wrong, but different approaches. to putting content in various areas. You've got users in community, you've got users in knowledge base, you've got users in all these different repositories looking for information. Um, it there is no like silver, like there's no way for me to answer that and say this is the way that you do it, right? Because it totally depends on your user base, the types of community that you've created, the types of technical documentation approach and structure that you have, and what they're used to getting and how they're used to getting it. Um, it also depends on they go to different touch points for help, and some users go to one touch point and others go to another. So you do have to replicate content in certain instances, but this is where when I say with that particular content in particular, you got to do your user research, you got to do the qualitative analysis, you should do customer journey uh, uh, modeling for high priority use cases, and then determine which content you're going to seed where. We did find that like wikis and those types based of approaches kind of are like they're kind of at a decline. Governance gets tricky with them, and when users are allowed to generate their own responses, or even engineers in a company, they may have like an agenda that's outside the scope of the actual brand integrity. You get into really kind of difficult situations. Where is that question? I just want to go back to make sure can you ask that question again?
Yeah, and I think you totally touched on it. Yeah, it was basically, is the trend more to keep help content on the product side or in its own special section? And I think you did address that.
It's both, though. It is
Mhm.
both, I think.
Absolutely, and it's
We
totally
found
dependent on your audience. Yep.
And we found too that a lot of technical documentation teams are taking more of an omnichannel approach. When I say that, they're looking at all the different touch points that the customer has and then figuring out how to create a help or self-service experience around that. You know, so yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Another question from Keith. You talked a bit about social media, and Blue Sky has gotten a bit of attention. Keith was asking, how much data you have, or what have you seen regarding Blue Sky? I just did a quick search. It looks like they've had about 25 million downloads since launch in February 2024. By comparison, TikTok has over a billion. So get your views in before Sunday. But curious what you've seen about Blue Sky.
Well, it's more and more folks are adapting it. And in fact, I had our marketing team, I had Mark Urell and Erica Zucker, who's does our social, to do analysis of Blue Sky. We're going to be looking at that report, I believe, tomorrow, or actually next week. It is getting more and more widely used. And I think we're no longer early adopters. If you want to jump on it, you're going to be like with a lot of other folks that are migrating to it. Um, I don't know this. I have not read the analysis of my colleagues yet. But yeah, I definitely think that it's a player out there to strongly consider based on the preliminary research I've seen.
Excellent. Thank you. We just had a question come in from Ed, and another reminder, if you have questions, definitely drop them in the chat. Tons of good ones so far, so keep them coming. Ed asks, as an aspiring UX designer, keeping an eye on the market, trying to make the jump to full time, do you have any pointers for someone trying to join that field?
But the one pointer I would make, and I'm kind of paraphrasing from a podcast I did with a other guest, but know your value and know how to articulate that, especially with UX. So, what metrics are used, or what types of performance mechanisms are used to demonstrate the value of user experience? Being able to go in and state that and say, this is the impact that I can have, based on improving UX overall, and in terms of creating a user experience that is customer, whatever it is, be able to tell that story and tell that story very succinctly and clearly. I think that that's key. So understanding the types of metrics and the types of testing and the types of qualitative and quantitative data and analytics that go into UX and why they're important, and then being able to speak to how it is that you can impact that in your particular career and field. And I think that's particularly important for UX because oftentimes they just look at the quantitative metrics because those don't require as much cost, and they forget that qualitative is a very important part of telling the holistic story of who a user is and what they need. But it's also a way for you to sort of showcase you know your value, and you understand how you can have a direct impact on an organization, and it's any type of interface or any type of engagement uh, interface or solution that your business is putting out there for end users.
Excellent, thank you. And Paula, I think you had a couple questions as well.
Oh, I have a couple of a little bit just kind of maybe random questions, but I'm curious, Kevin, when you talked about, brands, or the whatever it was, 74% of people said they wouldn't care if brands went away. What does that mean really? I mean, what would that look like? What is the sort of preferred scenario to having brands? I kind of don't understand
What
what that
brand
would.
meaning? And so brand is any type of, it's not just a logo, it's not just a name, it's an entire customer perception of an
Yeah,
organization, right? And what I think what they're saying is, and they've done this year after year, but what they're saying is customers are they don't trust what they're being told by
right.
corporations or companies, and or they're suspect of it. And to them, the brand isn't that important. What's important are these things that create meaning. And what's important is helping them with their needs, or in this year's kind of lever, saving time, money, and helping them, do what they need to do. Um, that's what's important to them. The fact that
Yeah,
it's Coca-Cola or McDonald's is not important to them. Now, they're not saying, I think, that they want all brands to go away, but I'm thinking that it's more of a indifference to what a lot of brands would say, well, we're really important because our branding is like, it's rethinking of that from more of a customer centric lens and trying to really connect with the customer in terms of, on their level. Brands forget that it is ultimately the customer who defines the brand and the brand
yeah,
experience. It is not the brand as much as they can put out there in terms of a logo, a color palette, a voice, a tone, a messaging, and experience. It's still the customer, up to the customer and their perception of that ultimately defines it.
right. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious if that, you know, if it isn't Coca-Cola, what is it, right? Is it, I want a, a generic cola-based, soda. I don't care if it's Coke or anything else. That's where I'm just kind of struggling with what that would actually mean to not have brands. I get, definitely that the wanting a deeper experience with them, or want to be associating with brands that have a good, presence, in terms of, their social awareness, doing good in the community, and all that kind of thing that you're saying. It's just it was hard for me to kind of understand what that would literally mean if brands went away. So anyway, okay. All right. I actually had one more question, but I know we're getting close here to wrapping up. Just one other question I had, which is completely different from the other one I just asked, which is, what do you see, kind of back to AI, the impact of AI on SEO? Because I've seen in my, I happen to know, and have worked with various people who are contractors or SEO agencies who are kind of nervous about what their profession is going to be with AI proliferating.
I think it's still going to be very much necessary, just as media planners and media buyers are kind of like, say, like, here's the deal. It still requires humans to sort of that creative lens, as well as that historic analysis. Like, I don't think SEO is going anywhere and people
Right.
doing it, to be determined. But there's a lot of stuff being written right now about just search engine optimization across the board and the ingesting of AI. What do they call it, with the AI results that pop up? Um, I just read something. I'm going to see if I can pull this up because I can't remember the title of it. And it was excellent. I think it was under SEO Watch. There's a lot going on in that world right now. I mean, in all of our worlds.
Mhm.
Um, research. Bear with me 1 second. I don't know if I'm going to find this. Yeah, I can't find this right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, no
But-
worries. We can share it later if you come up with it again.
Yes. Anything else? Hopefully this was informative for folks.
And we've gotten some good feedback in the chat. So thanks for that, everyone. You can also leave feedback on the meetup event. We do love to hear to get your feedback, and it helps us in terms of planning our programming and how our events are organized. So thank you for any feedback you're willing to give. For everyone who is local or might for any reason be in Seattle at the end of February, keep an eye out on our channels. We'd love to see you in person at the event at Ada's for the launch of Greg Dunlop's book. And keep an eye on all of our channels for information about our events starting and picking back up with our online events in March. With that, I think we can let Kevin, who is again up late, we can let him call it a night. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.